Zionism can no longer be defended. The unspeakable atrocities being committed in full view of the world cannot be ignored, and given that most people are disgusted by the diabolical behavior of the Israelis and their supporters, arguments defending Israel can no longer be taken seriously. Supporting the Zionist colonial project known as Israel is completely indefensible. What little credibility it had has completely evaporated. However, there is a divide among the anti-Zionists. The topic in question is not Israel's right to exist or to defend itself, but rather what Zionism actually is, and more importantly, who the perpetrators are, and what the driving force behind this ideology is. The difference is in the use of words. Those that fully understand the history and the particular faction that has infiltrated and usurped power over the collective West, that is Europe and North America, tend to say the word Jew. Some may refrain from overusage of this word for optics, choosing other words such as globalist or neocon, but they still know who these people are. There is no confusion about who is pulling the strings and what the driving force behind Zionism truly is. Then there are those who don't believe it's the Jew, or understand that they've spent the last 3 centuries conspiring to take over the world, restricting their language to Zionism, which they claim is nothing but British, or more broadly speaking, European imperialism. They believe Israel and the Jews are nothing but pawns, and the true villains were the British elites, who saw the strategic location of Palestine and the Levant through the lens of pragmatism to further benefit the empire, which the Americans picked up in the wake of World War II, as Britain was too weak and incapable of maintaining. With only trade and commerce in mind, colonizing the Levantine coast was simply transactional, with the underlying motivation being purely financial. Although it is true that this coastal region in the eastern Mediterranean is at the crossroads of Europe, Africa, and Asia, and is strategically located, allowing for the control of certain trade routes, it is not where the black gold is located, and neither is it the Suez, where half of all seed trade passes through, nor is it the most important choke point in the region. Anatolia, or Turkey as it's known as today, is arguably more important and the most strategically placed. In 1918, the Ottoman Empire had been defeated and dismantled. The British could have colonized Istanbul and the all-important Bosphorus Straits, the gateway between Europe and Asia, something London had its eye on, and seizing this territory had been the aim of the British for over 100 years, as it would also have served to bottle up the Russians in the Black Sea, who were their main adversary, denying them access to the Mediterranean. If it were true, and the British Empire sought only to increase its assets, then why the Balfour Declaration? And why this drive to create a Jewish state? Why not colonize Palestine in the same way India was colonized, or any of the other British colonies across the world? How does a Jewish state benefit the British? The answer is, it doesn't, and never has. The driving force and true power behind the British were not British at all, but rather a fifth column, which had slowly but gradually infiltrated and replaced the native ruling class over the previous 250 years, following the English Revolution led by Oliver Cromwell, which overthrew the last true king and absolute monarch. After the execution of King Charles I, Parliament usurped the throne, the Bank of England was established, and Freemasonry began spreading. I'll cover Freemasonry in a future video. By the 19th century, this fifth column had become immensely powerful and was able to influence the direction of British foreign policy. Religiously motivated Jewish financiers had been building settlements in Palestine as far back as the 1700s. This idea that Zionism was a secular movement is completely false. Behind every settlement project were rabbinical rabbis whose motivation came from Judaism. Once they'd taken control over the levers of power of the British Empire, they used their influence to push for the full establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. By the mid-1800s, it had already been decided by powerful Jewish families such as the Rothschilds, the Schiffs, the Arisons, and the Warburgs that Palestine would be seized from the Ottoman Empire and made into a Jewish homeland. Some may argue it was a cover for the imperial ambitions of the British in West Asia. But why would Britain need to hide its intentions, especially in the middle of the 19th century when it was at the height of its power? The British didn't need to explain themselves to anyone. If they wanted something, they took it. Many Protestants favored the idea of a Jewish homeland, as it fit into their own version of biblical eschatology. so it was easy to gain support among the non-Jews within the British establishment, and even the general population, who believed in this modern idea stemming from dispensationalism, a heretical Christian ideology developed by John Nelson Darby in the mid-19th century. Many like to point the finger at British Gentile statesmen such as Lord Palmerston, who promoted the idea of a Jewish state in Palestine in the 1840s. However, it's important to understand that Reformed Christianity had been heavily Judaized and took on the same messianic eschatological focus. Since the Church of England, a Protestant denomination, was the official state religion, these ideas spread easily, not to mention the other sects that had emerged after the Reformation, which were even more in favor of a Jewish homeland and viewed the Jewish people as divine, such as the Plymouth Brethren, among others. Side note, the Orthodox and Roman Catholics have never advocated for a Jewish state. What many disregard is the ideological side of Zionism. For pragmatists and atheists, it's easy to dismiss, as they only view things through the lens of materialism. If there is no clear financial or material benefit to be had, then it's nothing more than superstition and shouldn't be taken seriously. This naive empiricism is a blind spot, which can easily be exploited by those who put their ideology above all else. Fifth columnists have the privilege of operating under the concealment of the flag of their host country, in this case Britain, and later the USA. Their actions, good or bad, are seen as the actions of the state, and thus appear to be acting in the interests of the state and the people, who are then blamed, at least in part, for their nefarious behavior. The Union Jack was their cloak, and to the outsider, especially in the Arab world, there is no distinction between Anglo-American imperialism and Zionism. Today we see all the usual accusations and labels such as white supremacy and European settler colonialism, something that presents a challenge when debating this subject, as many settlers are European Ashkenazi Jews who share the same visible appearance as most non-Jew Europeans. However, this raises an obvious question. Why are only Jews allowed to claim Israeli citizenship? And not just European Jews, but Jews from absolutely anywhere. If Zionism were a European project, then why is it ordinary Europeans cannot make Aliyah, become Israeli, and claim land in the West Bank? The answer is simple. Zionism is exclusively for the benefit of Jews. Israel is a Jewish ethnostate, meaning non-Jews are excluded. Jews and Jews only are the beneficiaries of Zionism. Non-Jews are more than welcome to assist in aiding this Jewish project, but aside from limited financial reward, they are excluded. Now, this isn't to say that the British Empire did not stand to gain from colonizing Palestine. Always eager to absorb more territory, the empire would never turn down an opportunity to seize land. After all, their ultimate aim was to conquer the entire planet, centered on London, where the global parliament would be located. The truth is, the fifth column steered the British Empire and used it as a vehicle for their benefit at the expense of the British people, who ultimately lost their empire in the process. 2 world wars and 1.2 million dead are what it cost Britain to obtain Palestine, where today there are no British military assets, bases, or any land holdings whatsoever. The British Empire, along with an entire generation, were sacrificed on the altar of Zionism. And yet today, London still maintains total commitment to supporting this Jewish colony in return for absolutely nothing. October 7th has fully exposed the British establishment for the fraud that it is, and the so-called human rights that they've been browbeating the global south with for the past 100 years. Did I mention the King David Hotel? Now tell me that Israel was created for the benefit of Great Britain.